All right, 16-9 final, a big one here for the Jets as we're back with our guys, B-Mac. We know we love to give out game balls here, and we love to highlight defensive play with you. Some outstanding team defense throughout these last few weeks from the Jets. What are you seeing from that group right now? It's making them so effective.
Well, they're just finding ways to win. In today's matchup, they played against a backup quarterback, and they made Rippon look like a backup quarterback. They dominated in the trenches. They just eliminated their ground and pound attack, made the Broncos one-dimensional, and they forced turnovers. You know, LaMarcus Joyner, huge interception. They kind of flipped the field position, and offensively, the Jets couldn't do anything. They were banged up. They lost some players on the offensive line. Their best offensive player went out. Hall went out. He was looking like he was going to have a huge day, and they just couldn't do anything. So they just relied on good field position from their defense and kick field goals. And I'm okay in seeing this because if you look at teams that can find ways to win, they can win the ugly ball games, the ugly, dirty ball games, and that has been something that we've grown accustomed to seeing with the New York Jets. And hopefully at some point in time, their quarterback, Zach Wilson, wakes up, because so far he's just been benefiting from a good ground and pound attack and quality play on the defensive side.
Joe, you mentioned the 2010 Jets. A lot of parallels between this Jets team and that Jets team. Mark Sanchez was in year 2 of the quarterback. And how did that Jets team operate under Rex Ryan? They ran the ball a ton, and the defense did the heavy lifting, and you let Mark Sanchez throw some short passes. And that appears to be the blueprint, 12 years later, and it's working. And B-Mac talked about why that defense is so good. They've done a fantastic job drafting these young players, from Quinnen Williams a few years ago to Sauce Gardner this year. Sauce Gardner might be one of the top 5 cornerbacks in the NFL as we sit here, and we're 7 weeks through this season. On the other side, B-Mac mentioned Breece Hall and the impact he was having. He left early. Michael Carter came in, another draft pick from last year. And look, that 2010 team, at the end of the season, the leading pass receivers were a tight end in Dustin Keller, a wide receiver in Braylon Edwards, and a running back named LaDainian Tomlinson. Today, the leading receivers for Zach Wilson: Michael Carter, the running back; Garrett Wilson, the first-round pick, wide receiver; and Tyler Conklin, the tight end. So the blueprint is there. They just have to keep doing things on defense. And as B-Mac notes, Zach Wilson, hopefully sooner than later, can contribute more like a top 5 quarterback and less like, Joe Flacco, let's say.
And here we're seeing some of those concerning scenes when it comes to Breece Hall. Coming into the day, guys, this Jets team had the favorite for both offensive and defensive player of the year in Breece Hall and in Sauce Gardner. I'm glad you brought up the draft picks, Ryan, because you are our draft expert. Did you see it panning out to this extent this quickly?
Not this quickly, but Sauce Gardner is a guy, when you see him in person, he looks like a defensive end. He's about 6'3", long arms. I think he can tie a shoe standing up. And we see the confidence with which he plays. When he showed up at Cincinnati, Des Ridder told us, he said, look, we're not calling you Sauce. I don't care what your nickname is, Ahmad. About 2 weeks later, they were calling him Sauce after they were able to see what he was able to do. They still have Garrett Wilson, who I mentioned, who's flashed at times. They need to get the quarterback up and going, of course. They have Jermaine Johnson, the first-round pick out of Florida State. He has yet to contribute, but that doesn't mean he won't. And then Breece Hall was their second-round pick. And then you look at these subsequent draft classes, and they hit on guys year in and year out. And I think a lot of times we get caught up on the first-round picks, but it matters what happens on day 2 and day 3 when you build that club. And I think we're seeing the fruits of those draft picks, successful draft picks, after round 1. And look, it's not pretty, but as B-Mac notes, they're winning football games. At the end of the day, that's all that matters.
And let's look at some of the guys they acquired, right? You talked about some of the draft prospects that they've hit on, but what about guys like DJ Reed, C.J. Mosley, Whitehead, LaMarcus Joyner? Quality guys that have been in the league for quite some time, and they know how to be leaders on and off the football field, and we have seen their contributions as well. So they've done a real good job assembling a nice roster, a good mixture of free agents and draft prospects, and they have really shown the ability to take this organization into another direction. So all the guys we hit on, they have really cashed in. The one main contributor that we're all waiting to see cash in is the quarterback. And I understand he's been out early in the year with an injury, but hopefully he can start to contribute like some of his classmates have done, because if he picks up his game, the way that they've been doing things outside of the quarterback play, if he just picks up his game just a little bit, this team could make some noise.
Guys, each and every week we watch these games. We even go back to the film. We try and reverse engineer it and figure out why things are working or why they're not working. And we've pointed to the run game. We've pointed to the defense. But let's point at Robert Saleh for a moment, who came in with some question marks after his inaugural season as a head coach. Ryan, when you look at the job that he's done in getting this team to believe and play together and win in different ways, what can be said about Robert Saleh here through 7 weeks?
You know, B-Mac can tell you this much better than I can because we heard him talk about it. But when you have a coach that you believe in, whether it's Mike Tomlin or Dick LeBeau or Robert Saleh, you will do anything for that individual. And I think that's what's happening. In the first year, sometime is about laying the foundation, is about weeding out the guys that don't want to be there or shouldn't be there. And then once you get the group that you want, and once you get the draft picks in there and the free agents that you've signed, then you go to work. And I think the message that Saleh gave them, it's taken to heart, and it shows up each and every week on the field. And all you got to do is look across the field at the other team that on paper should be winning this football game by 2-3 touchdowns with Russell Wilson on the field, let's say. He obviously wasn't there because of the hamstring injury. And it feels like a different type of game that they're playing, in part because the coach seems inexperienced and over his head, Nathaniel Hackett. The quarterback hasn't worked out yet, and the players around him, at least on offense, aren't able to pick it up. The defense is doing its part, but there's only so much you can do on defense because they're not out there to score points. So I think Robert Saleh is probably the front runner, along with Brian Daboll, it turns out, in New York, as the for head coach of the year as we sit here, because it's been a great first half of the season for both those New York teams.
The best way you can tell that players respect their coaches is by seeing how disciplined they are. Because when you respect your coach, you're going to do everything your coach asks you to do because you respect them, number one, and you know they're putting you in positions to be successful. And that's what we're seeing with the Jets. That's what we're seeing with the New York Giants as well. You're seeing guys, they have bought into what they're selling, to what the coaches are selling. And not to mention they're playing hard. The effort is there. The energy is there. So when you have a well-coached group and you have a group that plays extremely hard, victories, wins will follow. And they start learning how to win. Think about this for Jets fans. How many years had you had to deal with learning how to lose ball games? Dick LeBeau used to tell us this all the time, guys. Dick LeBeau, I'm not lying. He would say a bad team will find a way to lose a ball game. And it's so true. When you watch football week in and week out, a bad team can be up double digits in the fourth quarter, but they will find a way to lose. In years past, the Jets, they were a bad team, and they found ways to lose ball games. This year, they're finding ways to win.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.